This time I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:35 p.m. and we will roll call in. Ms. Stout?
Sir?
Ms. Games?
Present.
Ms. Gray?
Present.
Ms. Rogers?
Present.
Mr. Russell?
Here.
Ms. Henderson?
Here.
And the chair is here. Great, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Monomoy Regional High School Student Representative, Samantha Good.
Hi everyone, I wanted to start off by saying Happy New Year. After a restful break, things have picked right back up at the high school. The seniors had our first day of open campus jostling last Friday and it went really great, so I just wanted to say thank you to all of you on behalf of the students for helping make that possible. This week in celebration of Lunar New Year, the Chinese Culture Club went over to the middle school to teach the 6th graders about Chinese language and tradition. Last night, our mock trial team took a big win over Cape Cod Academy, making us 1-1 in the Cape Cod division. As for sports, boys basketball has a 5-7 record, ranking 4th in the league, while the girls have a 2-1 record, ranking 6th in the league. Meanwhile, boys ice hockey is going 0-1, while girls stand 5-3-1. On the topic of arts, drama announced their spring musical of 9 to 5 for this March. More recently, seniors Adrian Wright and Britannia Buckner were accepted into Massachusetts All-State this week for trombone and voice alto, respectively. The music department also hosted their annual alumni show, featuring appearances from alumni as far back as 2003, showing just how close our music community is. Lastly, next month, Global Studies is taking a service trip to Bosnia to build a playground for underprivileged kids. Thank you all for listening. I hope you have a great night.
Thank you, Samantha, very much. Very exciting. Busy start of the year. Next item is public comment. Is anyone here wanting to speak for public comment? Seeing none? Oops. Dr. Carpenter?
So I have never spoken at public comment, but I'd like to only to save this individual from potentially sitting through a long school committee meeting until I get to.
Would you like to come to the podium?
What's that?
Would you like to come to the podium?
I'll avoid the podium. But I was going to bring this up in my recognitions, but I got a lovely email from Rachel Barnes a few weeks ago talking about our auditorium, and I've brought this up with the school committee about a position that we're kind of sort of bolstering in the 2024 budget for the stage manager. So let me just read the email and hopefully not embarrass Ms. Barnes or the person that she was writing about too much. But it says, good afternoon. I wanted to reach out and share some things I've noticed recently that might not be immediately noticeable to you regarding our high school auditorium. The space has always been beautiful, but until recently, I would not have described it as state-of-the-art. Since Aaron Bolton's arrival here, Aaron dressed in gray on gray, since Aaron Bolton's arrival here, some things have changed dramatically. And my understanding from what I've heard through the grapevine is it was almost like things changed dramatically overnight and have been running well since. But she writes, the sound system works every time. Flaws are fixed and outdated equipment is being replaced. Our lighting all works. Additionally, it's organized, plugged in appropriately, and used to much better result than ever possible before. The wooden bar at the back of the space, which appeared to me to be a necessary handrail, is actually a spot to hook up ceiling lights and create added effects. Come see 9 to 5 and see what I mean. The stage is clean and orderly. Everything has a dedicated space to make the space as functional as possible. Features I never knew we had are now up and running. For example, I was in the prop room and I suddenly heard music from the stage piped in overhead. We have the ability to allow students in the dressing room to hear what is going on from the stage or from on stage so they won't miss a cue. But no one knew that was there until Aaron came in and got it running. He found a similar unused function in Rose's room to help music rehearsals go more smoothly for singers who are standing next to louder instruments. There are plans in place for updates and improvements that Aaron has shared with stakeholders in the space. Our tech crew and students are being taught the genuine skills and dispositions that will enable them to enter college programs with confidence in these areas, like, let's say, one, Sage Barnes, And most of our students who had such skills previously came from community theaters that taught them for us. In short, things have gone from okay to practically ready for Broadway in a very short period of time. Please know what a gift it has been for our students and everyone using the space to have Erin at the helm. We are the envy of many local theaters right now. Kind regards, Rachel. And even this past week, I had a community organization reach out to me, and they'll be going to see the auditorium because they've heard great things and want to partner with us to be their home base, in part because of the gift that Erin has been coming to us here at Monomoy.
Great, thank you on behalf of the school committee. Thank you, Ms. Barnes, for the very eloquent email, and thank you, Erin, and welcome. And I always personally enjoy, and I know we all do, everything that happens in that auditorium. So I'm thrilled to finally, we can put it to 100% use. So excellent. All right, great. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the December 22nd meeting, as found in your packet. And I need a motion.
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
And any questions or discussion? Okay, and roll call. Ms. Stout? Aye. Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Gray? Aye. Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye. I'm looking for a motion for the January 12th, 2023 minutes.
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Questions or discussion? All right, and a roll call. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Gray? Aye. Ms. Rogers?
Abstain.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye. Hold on one second. I buried my agenda somewhere. Found it. Okay. And next item on the agenda, Monomoy All Sports Booster Club, Karen Gilmet and Terry DeVoe.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Terry DeVoe, and I am president of the Monomoy All Sports Booster Club. I'd like to provide a brief overview of what we do, who we are, in case people aren't aware. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So our mission is simply enough to support all our coaches, all our student athletes, not only at the high school, but at the middle school as well. We're made up of parents and family members. We're overseen by a governing board, of executive board that works closely with Karen to provide whatever support needed and work with her to take direction on where we can help out in any manner. We assist with requests from the coaches by purchasing some of the higher ticket items that they might not have available funding for, as well as during the season, things that might pop up and other items they might need. So just a few examples of what we've done over the last few years. We supported the build of our concession stand, procuring materials as well as the labor. For baseball, we purchased 2 pitching machines over the years, lacrosse nets, soccer nets, a new golf cart for our trainer extraordinaire, Taylor Murray. Softball.
Softball pitching machine.
Yes, softball pitching machine and baseball pitching machine as well, right?
Yep.
Yes. We've helped out with support of our new volleyball team. We fund tournaments. We provide meals to the island teams that arrive, Nantucket and the Vineyard. We also assist with tournament fees and travel. So the following slides will provide a little more detail, but here are a few items we do for fundraising. We have our Monomoy Brick fundraiser. We run and manage the concession stands through all seasons, inside and out. We provide season passes for our winter sports. And then annually, we do a mattress fundraiser, a golf tournament, and then we work with teams for their individual fundraising events. So if you look to a left, there's an example of our brick fundraiser where families can purchase the bricks, have them engraved, slate as well, and we install them between our concession stand and the turf outside in the patio area. To the right mentions our annual mattress sale, which does sound strange on the surface, but over the years, it's provided great revenue for our group. It's a company that works nationally with high schools to provide high-end, top-name mattresses and accessories at discount rates, and we've done great with this over the years. So the annual golf tournament held on Columbus Day. We register singles and foursomes, and we have sponsors that help us out. We offer prizes, silent auctions, receptions after the golf tournament, and this is very well received annually. And to the right is our next endeavor, which is going to be a huge initiative. It's to provide a press box to be constructed at our field at the top of the stands. And, you know, over the last few years, as we have traveled to Cape games as well as tournaments off Cape, we realized that we're in the minority not having a press box to offer video services, announcing, etc. So we're in the beginning stages. The plans are being drawn, and then we'll be putting it out to bid. But we're looking to raise over $200,000 over the next few years, naturally. Initially, Monomoy Boosters will be contributing $30,000 to get it kicked off, and much more coming on that as far as fundraisers, events, etc. But you know, please look to support that as well. Next slide, please. It's stuck. Okay.
I was thinking about it.
So we also, each season, we supply gifts for all student athletes. They vary between sweatshirts, T-shirts, shorts, socks, etc., all monogrammed or logoed, and we hand those out at the awards nights each season. Also, our outgoing seniors, we provide gifts to all of them. And then on the next slide, also scholarships. So every year we do grants through scholarships through Dollars to Scholars for our outgoing seniors that will be moving on. So our committee generally meets the third Wednesday of each month. It does vary a little bit here and there due to vacations or other events upcoming. We do have two subcommittees going right now. The golf tournament usually starts up right when the tournament ends and runs year-round pretty much. And we're going into phase 2 of the beginning of the press box committee. So we look for anyone who wants to attend our meetings. We advertise Facebook and in Twitter, and look forward to the support of the committee. But I just want to take a few minutes. I appreciate you giving me the minutes to just give the overview of what we do. So thank you.
Perfect, thank you. We really appreciate the updates. I always kind of
Okay.
like to know all the other good stuff that's going on in the district. Does anyone have any questions right now or comment? It all sounds exciting. Ms.
Yes,
Henderson?
Meredith.
I have a question. The last time you were here last year, Karen, you talked about potential grants for the press
Yeah,
box.
so-
Anything in action?
Unfortunately, we've been denied on every grant we've applied for, which has slowed down the fundraising process and has made us sort of refocus. So we're meeting now to kind of refocus our efforts on how can we raise, because it's a large sum of money. And so that's what we're working on now. So, you know, with that being said, obviously it pushes it out. But although I want to have it as quickly as possible, I know that it's going to take work, and everybody who's working on it is also working other full-time jobs. So it's going to take some time, and we know that, but we're committed to seeing it through.
And one of the problems is meeting the criteria,
Yeah.
being a press box. It's outside the norm, so that's something we ran up against.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Rogers?
Where could people find information about the buying the bricks and the slate?
So if you look on the Friday Focus, it's usually the last item at the end of each week. So there's a flyer in there that describes what's needed, and very simple.
I believe it's also on the Monomoy website. I think the Booster Club, has a page on there, and it should be on there as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you very
Okay,
much.
thanks very much.
Looking forward to the next update.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, student trip to Italy proposal for February of 2024. Robert there's actually an additional item that Robert gave us for our packet, so it's the glossier brochure, I guess I'd say, and then there's the traditional stapled packet, so little duplication, but this one's really fancy.
Salvete omnes, non basta una vita. As a Latin teacher, I think it's appropriate that I say something in the language. And believe it or not, that phrase is actually Italian, and it means one life in Rome is not enough. And I think most of us would agree with that, if not all of us. But anyway, moving right along, I have a proposal to take students in February 2024 during the winter vacation to Italy. And the three main cities that I would like to visit with them are Venice, Venezia, Florence, Florentia, and Rome, Roma. Now, the brochure that I gave you, there are two of them. One is the proposal, but the other one, that's the colored one, on the inside, this is where you see the exact itinerary and not just the map of the flights. So on day one, we would fly overnight to Italy, and day two, we arrive in Milan, and then we would meet our tour director, and then from there, we would travel to Venice. And then on day three, we would spend another day in Venice, and see the wonderful sights that are there. Then on day four, we would arrive at Florence. And again, we're spending like 2 days in each place. I took a trip with students 6 years ago, and you'd be surprised how much you can see in 7 to 8 days. And on that trip, we went to 3 countries. We traveled to Spain, to France, and then Italy. So on this particular trip, I'd like us to spend all of our time in Italy. And then on day 6, so 2 days in Florence, and then we travel to Rome, and then you can see we get to see the Urbs Aeterna, the eternal city, and everything that it has to offer us. And then on day 7, one more day in Rome, and then after that we would depart. If I had one regret, the only one would be that we didn't get to visit Pompeii, but that would have taken another 2 days, as well as increased costs. But I'm very happy to say that those 3 cities would be more than enough for a young person to travel to.
All right.
All right.
Great. I will open it up for questions. Come on, smart.
And it does have, it gives you the cost, I think, in the proposal too. It's around $3,300. So they're keeping the costs within reason, I think.
So is the student cost is $33.79?
Yes.
And I saw there were some payment plan options in here.
Yes.
Does that price change based on the number of students that attend?
No, I do
No.
not believe so.
Okay.
No, that's a fixed cost.
And then what about the cost for chaperones? Is that,
Oh.
how is that paid?
That is a 6-to-1 ratio. So I already have 4 chaperones and a couple others, and I'm planning on between 24 to 30 students.
Okay.
So we'll see how it goes and how many sign up. I have some that have already expressed interest.
And the
But
chaperones
the
paid?
chaperones will go for free.
Oh, they
For every
will?
6 students, yes. That's
For
how
every
most of
6
these.
students?
Yes.
So that's the cost, so if we had any additional go, or it says adults 389.
Okay, right. So if you had an additional adult, and I remember on my last trip to Europe, we did have a mother accompany us, and she paid that particular cost.
Do we know anything about where they're staying, where you'll be staying?
No, but in the proposal, it does give you some examples of the places that they offer for accommodations. And, many times, in order to keep the price down, they do have you bust out of the major metropolitan areas. So, that's somewhat of a downside. But again, can you imagine what it would cost to stay in a hotel in downtown Venice?
I know. Is EF Educational the same as the London company? Okay, great. I know Ms. Barnes has worked with them frequently, so she's given it a thumbs up. And I hate to ask the question, but I know one of the largest things about sending the kids out of country, and as Ms. Barnes can comment on, is COVID requirements. And is that going to be, may or may not be applicable in 2024,
Right.
but
Well, they do address it in the proposal.
they do?
Yes, in
And
the first couple of pages.
under safety, okay.
Yes.
And did you feel that that was adequate and?
Yes, depending on how things develop, but
That's right.
I'm satisfied with it, yes.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Ms. Gaines?
Yeah, so it says February 2024, so is that
Yeah.
during the winter break?
Correct.
Okay.
It'll be February 17th to the 24th.
Okay,
It's a total of 8 days, but it's Saturday to Saturday.
okay,
So they count that first day as one day.
Okay.
all right, thank you.
All right, great. We'll put it on our next agenda for a vote. The 2-2 or the 2-16, do you have a timeline?
No, I don't.
You don't? Okay.
No.
Well, we can put it on the 2-2, that's fine.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Gracias
Excellent.
Tibiago, Walete omnes.
Thank you very much. All right. Next item on the agenda, reporting out from the January 12th executive session. We discussed and got an overview from our principals and our curriculum director on the background of proposed positions that will be included or not in the budget for this season. And no vote was taken at that time, and we'll actually touch on those positions in the next item on our agenda. So that'll give you a little bit more of an idea. And the next item would be 5 through 12 curriculum director overview of proposed positions. Welcome, Mark.
Good evening, Mark Smith, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. So as the chair mentioned, I'm going to review for the committee and do a public presentation of the two positions that are in the budget and discuss the leadership position on why we think these are valuable positions and give the logic behind. I am the spokesperson for the leadership team, but the entire leadership team is behind these positions. As the chair mentioned, pretty much the entire team was in the executive session talking about, and I'll talk through sort of positionally how these positions support not only from a leadership perspective, but also I'll touch upon support across the entire district about why we think these are valuable positions. So, starting from a position of students, we all believe, it's baked right into our vision statement, that the students of Monomoy deserve an exemplary learning experience that positions them to be successful in the future. And we all agree that that's what the students of Monomoy deserve, nothing but the best. And the district has been supported by that financially for years. We talked about that multiple times. We're very blessed. I know we talk about that with our faculty. Our faculty talks to us about that we feel very blessed to work in these communities that support us. And it bears out when you look. This is one of several different graphics in different ways that I could show the way that our communities are well supported. There's this report that the state uses called a DART report, which essentially just pulls like districts from a variety of different categories. They look at things like enrollment and demographics and a whole bunch of different categories to find what they call like districts. And then you look at our percentage of net school spending, above, or percentage above our net school spending, based, or compared to our DART districts. There's only one other district that spends higher above our percentage of net school spending than we do, or percentage of required net school spending. So again, and I could have showed you several different ways of looking at this, and in every which way, we're well above the median, well above the mode, so we're well supported by our community because we believe. It's just one way of showing this belief. However, we continue to just sort of follow this trend that mirrors the state. So this is just one way of looking at our results, and this is like a 7-year trend of our results, or excuse me, a 5-year trend of our results. No, 7-year trend, I was right. 7-year trend of our results as a district, which shows our scores versus the state scores and how they just follow the patterns of the trends. We haven't really closed any gaps in the district, and in some cases the state has actually widened some gaps from us. And our argument is that what we're currently doing, our current model and our current structure needs some restructuring, because the way the status quo, the way we're doing things, isn't helping us move away from and break patterns away from the state. So what is our current structure? Well, when you look at curriculum and instruction and assessment, when you're looking at your curriculum office, you're looking at your curriculum office. It is a person who's responsible for pre-K to 12, all disciplines, and I'm responsible, there's no other positions that are responsible for curriculum development across the district. And what that ends up meaning is trying to organize groups of teachers to do work beyond the workday, or pulling teachers from their primary responsibility, which is teaching, during the workday, to organize committees, or using outside vendors to try to organize curriculum work. And essentially the work gets spread too thin. And then, because we are a small district, there are a whole bunch of other responsibilities that also need to get done, and I've listed those responsibilities up there, that this job also gets split into other responsibilities as well that need to get taken care of. And then at the school level, one way to ensure, because it's one thing for us to expect quality instruction, we also need to provide support to our teachers in ensuring that they're having effective instruction in the classroom, to provide feedback in an ongoing way. It's part of our responsibility as leaders to provide ongoing feedback to teachers. And that happens, one way that happens is through the observation and evaluation process, through supervision. And so when you start to look at our school-based leaders and how many teachers that they have to start to do that with, the numbers start to add up and start to get very cumbersome and very difficult for our teachers. This is our high school staff and how many teachers that they have to, and these are just the bare minimums. So this is assuming that they were doing the bare contractual minimum. And just as a little sort of mathematical exercise for both the committee and for the public, if we use some like rough assumptions. So if we assume, and like if you use sort of like a middle or high school model, it makes the math a little bit easier. So if we assume a classroom teacher teaches 5 1-hour blocks, and we assume that times 180 days in a year, that makes 900 blocks of time that the teacher teaches. And so for our professional teaching staff, the contractual minimum is 1 observation a year. So if the principal or assistant principal gets that 1 contractual observation done, that means that the teacher is getting feedback on 0.1% of their teaching and getting no feedback on 99.9% of their teaching. And all the research will tell you that in order to help move instructional practice, you need regular, ongoing feedback by somebody who has expertise in the content area and who can, again, provide you regular, ongoing feedback. And our structure does not allow for that. And it's no different at the middle school. Our middle school numbers are just the same. And so you could say, well, we should be able to do more than the minimum, right? Well, the challenge is, this is one fraction of what the school leaders have to do, because then there's the other part of their job, which is all the other things that the school leaders are faced with on a day-to-day basis, which, and this coincidentally happens to be the topic of my dissertation. And so this is not just our Monomoy principals. This is a pattern across the state of Massachusetts. I'm sure it carries in other states. Mine happens to be focused in the state of Massachusetts. But this idea of putting out the daily fires is a constant challenge that school leaders are faced with, and it hasn't gotten any better post-COVID. But constant discipline referrals, managing student crisis, which are separate from discipline referrals, right? Those are two separate issues. Oversight of professional development, whether they have sub-separate programs in their buildings, personnel issues at both the micro and the macro level. So a micro example is daily substitutes. Who's going where? How do I cover that classroom? What if I don't have enough subs in the day? How am I going to rearrange my staff? These are all things that principals are dealing with, or assistant principals are dealing with on a daily basis, to ongoing staffing challenges. Like, we're constantly hiring. I'll show you those numbers in a minute. Oversight of curriculum duties, our principals and assistant principals, lunch duty, recess duty, arrival duty, dismissal duty. And then another challenge, especially as we get into the upper levels, when it comes back to that expertise piece, is when you start to have, you know, courses in advanced level mathematics or advanced level sciences, and having enough expertise to provide content specific feedback is a challenge specifically to the high school. So all those problems existed pre-COVID. And COVID, some would argue COVID just exacerbated some existing things, you know, some underlying issues that were already there. But however you want to, you know, I was just going to use an expression that isn't a great one. So however you want to, I don't know, flip that coin. It's not a great expression. Yeah, however you want to slice that pie. I'm going to use that. It's a much better expression than the one I was thinking of. Thank you. I appreciate that. There have been some significant things that we've seen in the last 3 to 5 years. One has been staff turnover. We've definitely seen that as a district. We have hired, counted it up, 145 people since 2017. Now, there's some positions that have turned over, right? So it's not, so, you know, like some positions we've hired and then that person hasn't stayed, so we've had to hire again for that position. And that's just Unit A staff. That's not counting assistants, cafeteria staff. That's just teaching positions. 145 since 2017. So that's not only the hiring process, but that's all the supervision that's required. That's all the, if I go back to those observation slides, and the initial quality, if anybody's been paying attention to what's going on in the state, you know, the state's done some great things to help get teachers in the door, but they've also put these things in place called like emergency licenses, which basically means you don't have to have any teacher training in order to get an emergency license, which helps us get people in the door, but then they need an exceedingly higher level of support from the school in order to be successful in the classroom. And then there's by contract, each of those new teachers needs to be contractually observed a minimum of 5 times. And then we've seen a significant increase in social emotional needs for both students and staff. That I think I can draw a direct line to the pandemic. That it's been hard on everybody, and we've definitely seen that. And you know, the work that we're doing around the portrait of the graduate, there's new skills and mindsets that are needed for students simple little example, is my question that's posted there, which I promise you we're going to come back and do a whole separate presentation on this. But what does a world look like when artificial intelligence can write a full essay in 20 to 30 seconds? Like, what does that world look like for students? So how do we support teachers in preparing students for that world, right? So we need people who are focused on that work and have the time to think about that, and then be able to provide the support to teachers that they need in order to be able to effectively do their work and support them in those transitions. So if we don't have people who have time to do this work, then that work ends up on teachers who are already completely overburdened, right? So then we having to ask them to volunteer for committees, or have them work after school, or we pull them out of their classrooms to do this work, which means they have to make sub-plans to cover the time that we're pulling them out of class, and then they have to make up for the time that we have them out of class. And it's not an effective process. We need people who are dedicated to the curriculum work, who can focus on this work. If we want to really have that goal of providing the exemplary education that we all believe that our students deserve. Now, I've given you a much more detailed job description in the packet, but these are some of the highlights that we see are needed for this particular position, that it would lead and support teachers in the development and implementation of experiential and innovative curriculum. As we see it, one position would be humanities focused, one position would be STEM focused, 5 to 12, and they would, again, help, I'm not going to read all my bullets to you, but they would both help in the support and the supervision of moving curriculum items forward, helping support and research and implement effective instructional strategies, help with data analysis and helping us understand and analyze patterns in data, and help assist teachers in developing pedagogical skills, helping support content knowledge. I mean, all this stuff is constantly evolving, and it's way too much for one person to stay on top of. I'm telling you, I can't be an expert in English, math, science, social studies from pre-K to 12th grade, in world language, in music, and wellness. It's a lot. So, and then the effective pedagogical skills on top of that, because some of them are content specific. And then, anyways, so the details of the job description I've given you as we proposed them. And so if we're able to get these positions in, we believe that it will allow for more quality observations, more timely follow-up and feedback. It will allow for a more content-based perspective especially in those two areas, more effective support and supervision, and then it will allow us to move more effectively and efficiently through as we move building and district initiatives forward. As I mentioned, I didn't mention, I know I mentioned it in the executive session, I didn't mention it when I brought this slide up. Currently, from my position, I tend to launch initiatives and then I have to move on to the next initiative. This will allow us to launch and follow through with initiatives and see them through to the end. And then these positions will allow my position to be more focused at the elementary level. So while these are 5-12 focused positions, there's also benefit to the elementary levels in that I can focus my energies, instead of being spread all the way across the entire district, I can then focus my energies at the elementary level and give more time to those two principals, while these two positions can focus their energies at supporting the the middle school and the high school principal. And how do we compare to other districts? So we've done some research and polling both those dark districts, plus doing a little bit of sort of neighbor comparison, and where we currently sit as compared to how many full-time administrators do we have that do this work compared to our student enrollment versus where we're sort of requesting? Where would it put us? It would still put us below all of our Cape neighbors, but it would get us closer. And that doesn't account for other positions that other places have that are non-teaching, non-direct working with teacher, how do I phrase that? Positions that are in the teaching contract, but their job isn't to work directly with students, that support, I would argue, support curriculum initiatives like instructional coaches. In my previous district, I had instructional coaches. So their job was to help support curriculum work moving forward. They helped work with teachers on teaching, but their job wasn't to work directly with students. So they would support this type of work. So these districts have administrative positions like we're talking about, and some of them, and these other positions. So we're not looking for everything. We're just looking for something. So anyways, that's would show you sort of where we would position. I would argue that we've been running pretty lean for a long time, and if we really want to get back to that goal, if we really want to deliver on our promise that we believe in exemplary education and an exemplary learning experience for all of our students, then we're going to need some support to get there.
I'll open up for questions. Ms. Rogers?
So I've been very supportive of our curriculum director. I really appreciate being proactive, taking a more proactive route with the curriculum, making sure that we're on top and giving the best education possible for our kids. My only pause is that it's 2, just because of the large price tag and hearing from our principals last week about all of the immediate needs that they're seeing right now. And so my original question was going to be, could we just do 1 instead of the 2? But then you said that 1 wouldn't be able to cut it. But then I start to worry that maybe it would open up to needing more of these positions, because then we discover that the elementary school in Harwich, you know what I mean? Like, so I'd just be curious to see what other schools are doing and maybe seeing if this is on par with what they're doing budget-wise, or if they have it set up differently. These are just questions and what's coming to mind listening to it, so.
Yeah, so I mean, everybody's got slightly different models. Some are organized, like with like somebody that's more elementary focused, broad, and then are organized with somebody that's broad, so hitting that, broad, like a middle and upper high school level, but then other districts have content specific, which aren't, we have a Cape neighbor who has each, I'm trying to remember exactly how many departments they have, but like they would have, they have department heads, but they don't operate, they don't teach at all, and they have observation and evaluation responsibilities, and but I think their contract is set up a little bit different, so I think they're still technically in the teaching unit, but they're in a whole separate unit in their contract. So, and they don't teach at all, and they drive all this curriculum work, and then they also have administrative positions at the elementary level and at the middle school level, and they have instructional coaches. So, and then we have other neighbors that have central office positions that are STEM, humanities, and an assistant superintendent and instructional coaches. Everybody's set up a little bit different, but almost everybody has more than we do.
Thank you.
I think what I'm hearing also is that everyone has it in some way, where this is the design we've chosen, which works best for our district.
Yeah, because we did, sorry, I didn't cut you off.
No, I was just going to say, I think one of the other things that I've understood when listening about this proposal is that one will focus on math and science and the other on ELA, which I feel like, in my mind, that even further specializes that observation piece so that they really can fully commit and understand what's happening in the classroom to support that instructional, to support the curriculum and the teacher. And because I know I had a hesitation on the transition from elementary school, and I was like, well, we're starting at 5, but one of my big things has been, we've got Hartwich Elementary doing this, and Chatham Elementary doing this, and I think having, and I don't remember the full answer, but I remember I understood it once it came out, and the full picture is that when you've got those two people, that it's going to help streamline everything from pre-K through 4, so that those kids are together and then ready to progress through to grade 5.
Yeah, and what you actually will have is a curriculum office. So, if we're blessed enough for this to all move forward, you will have a curriculum office. So you'll have myself, and the way we've designed this is these 2 positions will report to my position. And so I will be coordinating directly with those positions, and we will be working together to build a cohesive experience. And and I'll be able to spend a lot more time focused at the elementary level. And so I'll be coordinating that experience up with those 2 positions. And I lost my other point. We've even talked about, we're trying not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but we also don't want to be caught unprepared. Like, how would we potentially reorganize spacing so that we would be in the same space and be able to, I don't want to have it so that these 2 people and it's physically hard to get together. So I've already just preliminary been okay, where might I position my office in a different spot so that I'm able to meet with these people regularly and share space. And so, because if we're fortunate enough for this to move forward, I want it to work, and I want it to work on day 1.
And you answered my question. It was you. It was you that was going to help, that was going to pick up that elementary piece.
Yeah.
Thank you. It all came back to me. Ms. Henderson and then Mr. Russell.
I'm in full support of this. Being kind of in this world, I know how important it is to have the specific content specialty, if you will, and being able to support the teachers, especially with that turnover that's happening. Having the new teachers need, a lot of extra support. Just having more people to support, just keep supporting everybody in the curriculum area. And I know I've talked about this before, especially with the ARC. Do you see these roles having some? I know it says support, I know it says professional development, but some sort of, I don't want to call it coaching because these are administrators, but some sort of ongoing supervision similar to what the elementary school teachers are getting with the ARC. Do you see that in these roles? Because I think that, to get to exemplary, it's that constant conversation that keeps happening and coming back to really improve our practice. So.
Yes, and that's exactly when we just had the conversation, 2 days ago, I think it was, so we had our leadership, so I think I mentioned the last time I was up here, your leadership team gets together at 6:30 once a month for our strategic meetings. And we literally just had it at the conversation the other day, continuing to sort of move issues forward, and we were having our tier 1 focus, and somewhere in that conversation, the conversation came up around, if we're fortunate enough to get these positions going forward, what we have to do is make sure that we don't let all these other responsibilities sort of start to bleed into these jobs. That these jobs have to have this laser focus on instruction and continuing to move this work forward so that it can be constant, it can be ongoing, it can be supportive, it can be job-embedded professional development, it can be regular feedback. Yes, that is the #1 priority for everybody that's in that room.
Okay. And then if we can fit some evaluations in, that'll just help.
Yeah, I mean, Evaluation, at least the way that we are positioned, it's a necessary, like, evil, right? It's something we have to do. But done effectively, like regular ongoing feedback is
Part of it.
yeah, it's a fine line between coaching and like evaluation has to happen because it's part of the state says it has to happen.
Right.
But when done well, it's more about the feedback cycle. You know, are you getting regular feedback around what our priority areas are, around what it is we're all trying to work towards, what our goals are? That's where we're trying to get. Right now, we just don't have the concentrated effort towards those things that we're trying to move forward, whatever those priorities are that we're trying to move forward, and content specific.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Mr. Russell, and then Sharon, I see your hands up too.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark, excellent job. Captured a week or 10 days ago when we were with all of the principals at a similar meeting with the issue to be printed up, but yet all of us listened carefully as to what a handicap we are facing. Reminds me, it's not a valid comparison, but a story. I'm a Celtic fan. Many of us here on the Cape and New England are, and as I watch the games, I notice whenever there's a timeout, there is equal the number of professional coaches sitting behind the bench than there are 12 uniformed players. Now that's the extreme because it's a business and they have ways that we don't have to increase that profit to make certain that the small forward or the center has the skill we want them to have. So there are 8 or 9 coaches for a team with only 12 players dressed. Professional teachers, professional learners. The difference is so stark. It brought back, in most of my memories where I worked were really fun, when I loved what I did. And yet we haven't, you mentioned there's one add to the next year and then the next. I happen to be an administrator with about 1,000, 1,300 kids, and there were 2 of us. And the model the state brought forward was very similar to this. Pre-meeting and a post-meeting, and then an observation, a full period unannounced, and a copy of that observation within the day to be given to the staff. So it went on and on and on. The best, and I did the best I could, but it was such a unhappy experience for me knowing as principal that not only was I shortchanging myself, by coming and going out of the rooms, the only thing I could improve on is getting a pair of sneakers that would allow me to go faster. So here we are you say how long? Well, that was for 25 years, and I've been in retirement well beyond 15 more years. And identically, every school in this Commonwealth is going through the same experience. So how does one address it and then fix it? This is a very good beginning. And it is so necessary for staff to be able to have feedback that's regular and more than just once or twice in an entire year. So I commend the work you put into this, and now it's up to us here as a school committee to support it within our budget and enhance in this 2 very valuable future people, given the opportunity to come into this high school and begin to give staff the support they really need. So thanks, Mark.
Ms. Stout?
Give staff support. Sorry, I'm watching this on TV because the audio is a lot better. Let me see if I can just mute that some. I appreciate all the work that went into this. I would just ask if Mark, at least in my case, when you compare things to like Quabbin or different places that I don't even know in Massachusetts where they are, if you'd be able to put all the Cape schools, and I appreciated what you said about that some of them have different things, not just principals, and curriculum directors, but house masters or whatever these different layers are and different titles. But that could be put in a graph, just so we could see it related to the K force. I don't mind putting a few others in, but I'd like to really see the K so we know better what we're comparing it to. And I have to say, I'm very excited about the coaching aspect of this, because no principal can be, or curriculum director can be proficient in all the things they're evaluating. The coaching, I think, are great, and I understand about the evaluation now. This has to go to Teachers Association to pass an impact bargaining, or am I not correct on that?
Not as I understand it, no. It would be if, it's not, the way we're positioning it is these are administrative positions. So the only way that it would have to go in front of the, it would be as if we were trying to say to the association that we wanted these to be teaching positions that had observation and evaluation responsibilities, which would be a change in current working conditions, because currently we don't have any teachers that observe and evaluate. So what we are proposing is 2 administrative positions. We currently have administrators. We're just asking for 2 new ones that would, and these are, the way we're proposing these are on the same contract as what our assistant principals work. So this would be assistant principal level positions with different responsibilities. And it's not taking any current existing work from anyone. So we don't see it as a need for impact bargaining. It's not our position.
Okay. Thank you very much for the clarification.
Ms. Gates.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. So 2 positions, and I'm glad Jackie asked the question because I had forgotten. So one is going to specialize in ELA and the other math and science. Is that right?
Humanity. So it would be ELA
okay.
and history.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I guess they're going to be traveling back and forth between the 2 buildings.
Yes.
And you mentioned the curriculum office. So where do you anticipate that being?
I don't want to count my chickens before they're hatched.
Okay,
So.
all right, that's fine. And then I'm guessing, I'm curious, like with ELL, and I would assume they're going to be working in that capacity as well?
It's more about sheltering content, right? So part of every teacher's responsibility is to shelter English, or to use sheltered English immersion strategies within their content area. So it's just about how to effectively do that within the content area.
Okay. Now, artificial...
It's more around instructional strategies than within the specific content area.
Okay, that's fine. And then artificial intelligence, I'm really bugged. This is not the area to talk about it, but at some point, I would like you to come talk to us, because...
Jim and I are planning on coming and doing a whole separate presentation on that.
Because I'm bugged, an AI can write an essay in 20 seconds. I mean, why do we even need, I don't know, I remember the movie years ago, WALL-E, was it WALL-E? WALL-E. I'm like really bugged by this whole concept of AI and wondering,
Wow, Wally was cute.
Don't start, like, we won't leave here if you send me down that rabbit hole. Like,
Okay.
If we want to get out of here before 10, don't send me down that rabbit hole. Yeah.
okay, so I do, I'd like to have a conversation about this at some point, because I am really concerned. Okay.
Dr. Carpenter.
Just to loop back to the question you had, Jess, which I thought's good and fair. So in terms of some of the CAPE models and the spectrum that exists out there, what this is one might argue the Bourne model. So if you look at the page, Bourne has 11 administrators, and so this is it's a very similar size school district, just slightly smaller than us, and they added on two additional curriculum support people. So you've got that. So you've got districts that have handled it on the administrative side, and then we could say there's another way that a couple of the districts on this list, one of them being Mashpee, have handled it, which is to take department heads and to have a union that wants, it is okay with culturally with having a subset of their membership with a foot in both worlds. So you'd have a district like a Mashpee that might have the department leaders, instructional leaders at the secondary level released 0.4 times every one of the departments. And if you think about that and you say, okay, there's over 6 departments and you take 6 times 0.4, it's a number that comes up greater than 2. At the end of the day, but it starts to have a cultural impact in terms of it's a different approach than what our district has had and what my former district had, where you evaluated or you were in the teachers association, and then you go to a district. If Meredith wants to talk about her own, I'll let her. But if we go to a district like Terry's former district in Barnstable, it's sort of like it's a much bigger district, so that plays into it. But a Barnstable would have a full-time person who's responsible at the secondary level for every single content area, and potentially more administrators that are doing the evaluation piece of it too. But you're big enough so that you are having that. And then I think where you're like, well, what would happen? Why wouldn't it show up at the elementary level? And I say, on this list, where you see that happening, again, it's a slightly larger district than us is a Wareham. So if you were to go to the Wareham website and look at it, they have curriculum specialists that appear at the elementary level, and they have curriculum specialists that are appearing at the secondary level. But so you see that range, and a lot of it depends on how big the district is. So DY, bigger than us, and has more layers into it. This is just sort of an acknowledgement that if we want to try to move the needle, we need to kind of provide additional support for our teachers on the curriculum front. And it's just saying, okay, let's not sort of overshoot, and this is just trying to get us more, but position us. I think we'll still be lean relative to the area.
Yeah, and the only piece I would add to that is the model that we use in public education isn't built on any sound logic. Again, if I had 30 minutes, I'd give you the whole history, but it's not, it just sort of evolved organically from one-room schoolhouses that eventually just got stacked together, and one person got put in charge of them. And like if you look across any other sector, whether you look across private sector, you look across, even just look at our local town municipals and look at the number of administrators that are in our local town municipals and how big their departments are and how many administrators there are in those, and compare it to us, their structures are they have many more administrators for the number of employees than we do on both sides. And it's not just our towns, it's again, just municipal government. Private sector, if you think about, a bank, any finance institution, any other private sector industry, the team size to the supervisor ratio is nothing like you see in public education. When I was a principal, I had 110 direct reports. You never see that in private industry, and you don't see that really anywhere else other than public school. And it's just because we kept stacking one-room schoolhouses together, and you had one administrator in charge. Again, I could give you the history lesson, but I'm not going to. But it's not because it's built on some sound logic. And then they changed all the expectations with No Child Left Behind, followed by ESSA, and we're expecting more, but keeping the same structure. You just can't keep doing the same thing, expecting this. What's the definition of insanity? Keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
I think it was Tina asked about impact bargaining, or the unions.
No, it was Sharon.
Oh, Sharon.
Yeah.
Well, somebody over here. I do think if the MRA were to say, hey, you know, I think it is fair to say that, you know, if they were to say, hey, we'd be interested in exploring a Mashpee model, that does involve conversations across the table, but it's a different model, and so I don't want to say, that you don't talk about these things, and clearly we would talk with the association about what that job description is and how it fits into the overall evaluation picture, because evaluation's part of the contract. So it's not just a clear no. It's it's all depends. At least I think the olive branches and the outreach that I've had with the association, I don't believe there's a want desire to have dual hats like you'd find in Mashpee. But if an association were to come forward and say, this is what we'd be interested in discussing, one could.
Ms. Gaines?
Yeah, I have one other question. So on one of your slides at the bottom, it says district does not have an assistant superintendent. How much of your role, I mean, and this might be getting a little deep, but I'm curious, is tied to playing a position that doesn't exist? Does that make sense?
I think I understand your question. Yeah, I'll let my boss answer that question.
I'll throw them the lifeline. So again, if we go back to the different models out there, there are a few of our neighboring districts that have an assistant superintendent who essentially does a lot of what Mark does. So again, Mashpee doesn't have a curriculum person. Their assistant superintendent does the curriculum. There are other superintendent, or there are other school districts, even in the area, over the last 10 years, where the Michael McMillan had sort of the assistant superintendent title. And again, if you have a much larger school district, you might actually have a situation where you have an assistant superintendent who's in charge of finance, an assistant superintendent who's in charge of curriculum, and so you end up with these layers, and a lot of it depends on size. So I think we've evolved in a fairly relatively small school district, and this is how we're set up. But Mark does functionally what most school district has as an assistant superintendent, and I welcome Mark to go to, when the superintendents meet, Mark comes along as, our sort of de facto assistant superintendent and attends the superintendent's meetings that we have on the Cape and Islands, and, so I treat him the same way that Mashpee treats their assistant superintendent that oversees curriculum.
Okay, thank you, because I think that's important to recognize. If this worked out, so you would be the elementary person, but you're also acting in this role. So I think it's important really to recognize that. So I just wanted to have it clarified, I guess. Drew.
Just as my last comment, Mark, I'm hearing, a lot of evaluation and observation and instruction in these new positions, and that it's an administrative position. And I think we touched on the team leaders. I think that's what they are in each department. Because I just want to make sure that these positions are also, and it is in the description of, of their essential functions, but that it's supporting our teaching staff, because I know they have a lot of standards to meet. And as we're evaluating the curriculum and we're evaluating our teachers, they're evaluating the students. So it's a lot. And as we're introducing new curriculum and we're developing new curriculum, that's a lot as well. So I just want to make sure that these positions are also, helping kind of embrace our teachers and supporting them with what they need. And to touch on the team leaders, just empowering them, their peers, to kind of bridge that gap between these positions and the teaching staff, I think will be important, so.
No, I 100% agree, and that's the primary function, is to do all the work that the teachers don't have the time to get to related to the curriculum, right? And then from an instruction standpoint, to be able to provide the ongoing feedback and the ongoing coaching is probably the best word, right? In order to move whatever our initiatives are for. So, for example, at the high school, they currently have, as part of their school improvement plan, is to really focus on student discourse. So that really the idea there is to increase the amount of time students are discussing topics, and that students' voice is heard inside the classroom, that students are wrestling with ideas, but those come with specific instructional strategies, right? And it's not just, we can't just wish these things into existence, right? And we can't just assume that teachers all of a sudden can just do it, right? They need support, they need professional development, they need modeling, they need feedback, they need a secondary observer to say, hey, maybe next time try this, or here's something that you can do, here's how you could question around that particular novel or that particular text, or here's how you can do it within your mathematics classroom, here's how you can engage deeper around that particular scientific topic. Somebody who knows the content and can help support it in a regular, ongoing way, can attend PLCs on a regular basis and help support that, and help support, to your point, the team leader in order to help move those agendas forward, can bring them together vertically across the two schools to make sure that we're moving these ideas both up and down. So yeah, that is the primary focus. As I said, I think it was to Meredith, observation and evaluation is a necessary evil of our job, but done well, like the observation process of evaluation, when done well, is an ongoing conversation with teachers, right? And it's an opportunity to provide feedback. So.
Thank you. And let's see, any other questions? So that was great. Thank you. We will be coming back to this at some point. It'll probably go to finance sub again, and we're still waiting for final budget numbers to come in from the state and from health insurance. So we will be revisiting it again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is housing partnership. Jess?
Yes.
Phew, I was hoping I didn't surprise you.
I was ready and then I wasn't. So when I was appointed as the housing liaison for the school committee, I had approached Carolyn McClellan, who is the chair of the Chatham Community Housing Partnership, about just sitting in on some of her meetings, being updated on what's happening with Chatham with affordable and attainable housing. And she actually invited me to come as a representative of the Monomoy School Committee to be a guest at their February 15th meeting. To discuss how the housing crisis has impacted our school system, and then participate in an information session in preparation for their February 16th forum that they're hosting. Not the Chatham Community Housing Partnership, but the town of Chatham, in order to talk about all of the opportunities that are coming up for affordable and attainable housing. So the forum is going to be on February 16th. There's a survey that's going out to all Chatham residents, so if you could just keep an eye out for that. The survey results will help shape where things go with their forum. So it's not out just yet, but it should be coming out soon. So that's my update.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions for Jess? And thank you for doing that. It's very, very helpful. Dr. Carpenter?
Not a question, but related. I think I mentioned at our last meeting that Harwich 2 is recognizing housing challenges, and there's a housing huddle. I believe they're referring to it in Harwich. That's going to be Wednesday, February 1st at 204 Sisson Road. from 8:30 to 10, and I'll be one of the panelists that will be part of that, talking about how housing is impacting us as a school district, both when it comes to our families, but also when it comes to hiring and retaining staff.
Thank you, Dr. Carpenter. Next item on the agenda is substitute rate increase. Michael McMillan, Business Manager.
Good evening, school committee. So this first request is a memo in your packets to increase substitute rate for two of the roles in the district. So at the moment, the clerical substitutes and the cafeteria worker substitutes are currently below $15 an hour. As of January 1st, the state had increased the minimum wage to be $15 an hour, and although the school district isn't actually subject to the state minimum wage, we're subject to federal minimum wage, which is a lot lower. But it behooves us to offer at least the minimum wage if we want to be able to recruit people to come and work here. So for now, we would like just to increase these two roles from $14.25 an hour to $15 an hour.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Michael? Discussion?
I was just going to ask, when you make the motion, if you could make it effective as of January 17th. The payroll manager asked that so that we capture people in the most recent, the upcoming paychecks.
Do I have a motion? Mrs. Henderson.
I would like to make a motion to approve an increase in the hourly rate for clerical substitutes and cafeteria substitutes to $15 an hour, effective as of January 17th, 2023.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, and roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
Second.
Ms. Stout? Sharon? Roll call vote?
Okay. Do you hear me? Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye.
Thank you very much.
Michael McMillan, Business Manager, Q2 Finance Report.
I'm not sure this is going to work.
You're not sure?
I'm not sure. So, yeah, you might have to. I circulated in your packets, you'll find the finance report through to the end of December. So this is the second quarter. So this is, we're halfway through the year. And if you go to the first slide, we do have enough money to get through to the end of the year, so that's good. We are, however, I highlighted the number there is around 4% left in our budget once you take into account all that we spent so far and all the payroll and everything else that we already have encumbered. That's lower than where we've historically been for a number of reasons. We knew this was a tighter budget coming in. We have also seen increases in a number of areas, and I will highlight those in the coming slides. And that means that at the end of the year, we're probably going to have less left over than we did at the end of last year. And what that means is that there'll be less in our excess and deficiency funds available to offset the FY25 budget. Now, as I mentioned, there's a couple of areas where we've seen a big increase in costs. One is around operations and maintenance. Well, actually, sorry, these are two areas where we're above budget. One is operations and maintenance, and one is professional development. And we'll be asking for for budget transfers for those two areas and a couple of other items. We're also seeing expenditure increases in utilities. Expenditure is up in professional development and also in substitutes. And we are adding, as we've discussed at previous meetings, we're adding a new pre-K section which will increase our costs in teachers and teaching assistants. Next slide. So this is just showing that annual expenditure. So you can see that dark blue line in the middle of each of those charts is in each of those lines is how much we had expended or encumbered to the same point, each point last year in the previous 5 years. So you can see the thick blue line in the middle of 2023 is a lot closer to the top of that light blue chart, and that's where you're seeing that we're just down to that 4%. Go to the next slide. We can. And this line, so this chart is just a little sense check to make sure that we're on track with previous expenditure. So the orange lines are a forecast based on the last 5 years of expenditure of what we would expect our expenditure to do for this year. And this is just a way for me to check that nothing's out of the ordinary. Because sometimes it's hard sitting here in December to know that how the expenditure is going to play out. So for example, we know we always have a big uptick from May to June when we pay out all our summer salaries and for teachers or people who are on 26 paychecks and they get paid over the summer. So in order to see how this might play out, we track the forecast expenditure month by month over the year. And then we compare that forecast to what we're actually spending each year. So far we're a little bit above where the center line is. So we can have a forecast and a lower bound and an upper bound. And we're a little bit above that forecast. So that's why we're seeing that 4%, that remaining unencumbered and unexpended is down. But we're not too far off where we'd expect to be, and we're broadly within range of our forecast. Slide. And this is another one. So I appreciate these slides. They're a little complicated. I'm going to keep using them quarter after quarter, and because I think they help to tell the story of the expenditure in the district at the moment. And this chart, this breaks down all our expenditure into major accounts. And those are the major accounts we use to track the budget. Those are the big buckets we use to track our expenditure. And again, I've used the light blue line as the budget for each of those major accounts. The dark blue line is how much we spent to date. And then that red line is how the percentage we had spent at the same time last year. So that's just another way to sense check. Okay, we might be within budget, but how does it compare to where we were at this point last year? So, for example, if you look at teachers, because that's the biggest, longest line there, you can see that the dark blue line is, we've definitely got some room between how much we spent now and what our budget is. But you can also see from the red line, which is even lower than the dark blue line, we have less this year than we had last year. And last year we came in significantly under budget last year. So I think last year was a little bit of an anomaly. But it's a good comparison to check in and see where we are. There's one area, so you can see professional development, which is 5 slowly goes down. We're over budget there right now. We spent money on our literacy program in the elementary schools, also the new math curriculum at the high school, and on differentiated instruction at the middle school and the high school. The other area I wanted to highlight was operations and maintenance. And actually, if you go to the next slide, so that chart I showed with all our expenditure, where we're tracking the forecast and the expenditure, this is the same chart, but this time just looking at 3 areas: maintenance of building, grounds, and equipment. So that's like all the work, all the facilities work that we get done. And we're spending a lot on facilities so far this year, and costs are up. And I mentioned this at our last meeting, actually, when we were talking about the FY24 budget. We're just spending a lot more money on repair of our buildings, and the cost of those repairs are more expensive because of all the challenges everyone else has seen in the economy. So the tight labour market means that our vendors are paying their staff higher, and those charges are being passed on to us. Goods are more expensive to come by, and the inflation is causing those goods to be more expensive as well. So you can see how we are way off where we should be for this this for, where we have been, we're now on substitutes. Yeah. Well, so you can see, I mean, they both tell very, very similar stories. But so now this is the substitutes expenditure, and again, you can see where we are way over forecast on substitutes. And so we're seeing, so it's a number, it's two things really. So more absences are leading to the need for more substitutes, and we are doing a better job of getting substitutes to fill those positions. Not always, but sometimes. And, you know, so if we don't get a substitute, it doesn't cost us anything, even if we need it. But if we need it and we get it, that's when it costs us more money. We're also seeing a lot of long-term substitutes being required for a bunch of different reasons. And often what I hope as the business manager is that the person they're in for doesn't need to get paid for whatever reason. You know, somebody's out for whatever reason, but they don't need to get paid. Is what I hope, so that I'm able to transfer funds in. But at the moment, that's not the case. So a lot of the time, those people are continuing to be paid, and we're paying a substitute. So essentially, we're paying two salaries, because that's what's required by the contract and the situation. But that does mean that that's impacting our budget and our bottom line. And again, this is all contributing to why there's only 4% left at the moment. All right, you can jump ahead. Revenue, so the other side of things, so revenue doesn't change so much because we kind of have a good idea of what we know what we're getting from the towns. So that's set, they just send their check every month or so. We apply for grants from the state, and we have our 3 or 4 major grants, and that's the ones that we know what we're going to get, you know, ahead of time. There are a couple of areas where we're seeing revenue going up. Medicaid revenue has gone up, so we're doing a good job of claiming Medicaid expenses. So that's when we're providing medical services to students within the school, and we claim money back from the state. And it's a really complicated, difficult process claiming those funds, but last year or so we changed the vendor we worked with to do that, and we've done a lot of improvements in that process. And there's more COVID costs are covered, and for those reasons we're seeing more revenue coming in. Our charter reimbursement has gone up, and that's really just the state made a mistake last year and they're fixing it, so that's why we see an increase in that area. And again, similar with Chapter 70, he also made a mistake there, and so we got a lot more money early on, and so we just see it looks like there's an increase, but it's really just timing. We're getting more money this year, early on this year. So again, circuit breaker revenue, that's where we get reimbursement for special education costs. So that is down slightly. Again, there's a timing issue there that makes it look like it's down a lot more, but for now it's down about 14%. And we know that because we know how much we're getting this year. We don't know what we'll be getting next year yet though. School choice is down a little bit. Again, like circuit breaker, there's a little bit of timing here, but we do expect the total to be about 3% lower than it was last year. It's not a huge amount, but it's a little less, and that's because we have slightly fewer students coming into Monomoy than in previous years. Still a lot more than are exiting, so we're still net benefiting from that, and although the one number coming in has gone down slightly, the number going out has gone down a lot more, so it's definitely positive. And food service, so we are receiving funds from the state for free meals this year. So during COVID, federal government provided free meals, provided the funding for free meals. However, federal funding stopped for that, but the state voted to pick up that cost. However, they've not started funding it yet. So we've not started to receive the reimbursement from the state yet. Those payments will be coming soon, I hope, but at the moment our revenue is down because we haven't received those funds. We should be receiving them soon. All right, I think that's it.
I believe we have
Any
a vote
questions?
required for that, so any questions? Ms. Games?
Yeah, I guess I'll just express a statement of concern.
Yeah.
Am I echoing?
Oh, Sharon.
Oh my gosh.
Sharon, can you mute? Sharon, can you mute? She did.
Did she? Okay, good. Yeah, just a statement of concern, because you said there were more absences this year.
Yep.
And, I mean, I know, I'm concerned about that. I'm just wondering if there's something going on that we need to be aware of. I'm just concerned about that. So I'll just make that statement. I don't know if you
Yep.
can respond, but it looks like the superintendent might want to.
I think it's complicated. I think COVID's still with us, so that's a piece of it.
Okay.
And then I think there's a piece that I know Rachel and I and Michael are on the sick bank. And I think, and you've heard about this elsewhere, but during COVID, I think there weren't a lot of procedures that were happening. Like, let's say somebody needed a hip replaced or a knee replaced, and it wasn't happening during COVID, but now is. So I think, so when Michael's talking about what his hopes are, from a superintendent's perspective, my hope is that some of the uptick that we're seeing when it comes to people who have exhausted sick days, and there have been more this year, that it's an impact of COVID that hopefully, will catch up to that, and it'll be behind us, and we'll get to the other side. But there has been more protracted times out than what we've seen in the past. Some of it COVID and COVID long haul situations, but also, people who, who are having some deferred maintenance taken care of.
Okay, all right, well, that makes sense. All right, thank you for that. And just out of curiosity, because I know this is a quarter two report, but is there kind of like on the circuit breaker, and I guess the food service, is there a general timeline as to when you can expect the payments, or they just show up when they show up?
So for circuit breaker, yes, for circuit breaker, they're supposed to come out, sort of at the end of each quarter.
Okay.
So they're just a little behind.
Okay, that's fine.
Food service, it's completely new for the state to be reimbursing so much of the free meals. So the state used to give us a small portion of free and reduced meals that we provided, and the state gave another portion. So, sorry, the federal government gave us another portion. So now the federal government is getting their portion, and the state's making up the whole of the rest of the cost. So that's new, and I think they're still grappling with that. So they haven't worked out, or they haven't sent us along the payments yet, but we should be getting them soon.
Okay, and for right now, we're paying for the food service? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tina. All right, if there are no other questions, I'm just looking for a motion, and I believe it's on our, Ms. Henderson?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the fiscal year 23 quarter two budget transfers as listed in the memorandum provided to the school committee this evening.
And a second?
Second?
Second, okay. Sharon?
Yes, I had a question and kind of a statement. The substitute has always been an area, and when I say always, for the 10 years or since Monomoy began, that I've been on, I don't remember a year that it's ever gone down, but I might be mistaken, because I'm not the budget person. But at any rate, I know some of the teachers that have had the flu and they've been out for a week at a time, and there was nothing that could be done about it. There's just more than COVID going on out there, unfortunately, but it just, I get a little nervous looking at this, how things have gone up with the heating and with the substitutes and all of this. And Michael, you are just the most calm, collected person, which is, I so appreciate your data and your calmness, but are you at all concerned? If this was my household, I'd be very concerned.
I'm getting there. I'm not too concerned yet, but I think I'm not concerned for FY23. So, I mean, we have 4%. I know there are areas where I'm comfortable that will definitely be under budget, such as transportation, partly because we prepaid for some of those costs. I are also, and you'll see in those transfers, our school choice cost, that's for students who are going out the district to other public schools, that's way down. So I'm comfortable that we have room there, and that's helping to pay these other costs that have gone up. But if things keep going like this, so if our costs keep going up this way, if inflation keeps going up, or inflation stays at 7-8%, if we continue to have so many costs related to HVAC, our heating costs continue to go up, all those things start to make me nervous. And so that's when I look at our FY24 budget, and I know that we are under pressure, not yet, but we will be under pressure to keep that a low percent increase. Then I'm just beginning to get nervous that, a lot of pressures are really going to start to make our budget even tighter. But that said, I do know we have areas where we are under budget. Our excess and deficiency, that money that was left over, is nice and healthy at the end of FY23, and that will definitely, FY22, and that will definitely help us for a couple of years. So it's kind of, if this is it and things will kind of go back to normal in a few months, then this is fine. If this is going to be what it's going to be like for the next few years, then I think it's going to be, some sleepless nights.
All right, so we had a motion, and then we had a second. And so I will proceed with roll call. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Games?
Aye.
Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye.
Thank you very much.
Michael.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the notice of Monomoy Regional School Committee vacancy. I laugh because I'm the item. I'm not the item, I'm talking about the item. We recently had a Chatham constituent member resign officially Friday, January 20th, 2023. So there is an open spot for the Chatham position at this time through voting season in May. So if anybody knows of someone who would like to represent the town of Chatham and support Jess and myself and Betty, that would be fantastic in your town. Spread the word. And we have signed the official letter of resignation, which will go to the town. So, and we thank Danielle for her time. Ms. Gaines?
Yeah, just, can you remind us of approximate timeline as to when this will play out and when we might have a new member?
Dr. Carpenter?
So I was in contact with the town manager prior to our meeting just to see, so we'll be, making sure that the select board at least knows. I think the challenge that we're going to have is finding someone, because I think realistically, I think at the earliest we could be looking at the end of February, and it could be more likely by the time all of the process happens, with Betty's, that we're into March, and then 2 months later, the person would need to be running for election, because ideally, in an ideal world, because it's a position that's open until, so I think some of the conversations that folks need to be having with prospective people is, hey, would you be interested in running for a position for May 11th for school committee? Oh, and by the way, if you are, here's an opportunity to get started a little bit earlier.
Ms. Games.
So is that rule, is that a town rule or is that our agreement? I mean, why, and I guess I'm wondering why it's not written that you can just complete the term. So if, because I know this comes up, I'm just curious where this came from.
I believe it's covered in our regional agreement, how vacancies are filled.
Mm-hmm. And the timeline, I believe, is in there as well.
Okay, so I would like to ask the school committee, because I know we're looking at our regional agreement soon, for us to think about this, because this has happened in this year. I just would like us to maybe think about this, because, yeah, to like the because I was looking at the term of the person resigning, and had we done that and just fulfilled the term, it would have given us a whole other year rather than 2 months.
So you're asking if we would look at the regional agreement and possibly make an amendment to, if you are going to resign within 5 months of your term ending, that you can't?
No, not about that. It's just when we replace the person, to
Yeah.
consider, and again, I don't know where the language is, but whoever's replacing, letting them fill the unexpired term, or whatever the word is, rather than just to the election. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you understand what I mean? Because what Dr. Carpenter said, so it's like it's such a learning curve. Somebody's going to come in, sit here for 2 months, they've got to run, they might have a competitor, they might not. I mean, what's the advantage really for somebody to?
This term isn't expiring.
That's what she's saying.
Right.
Yeah.
So she's saying like, so if that seat has 1 more year in their term.
So when we go through the interview process, you want it included that it's the remainder of this school year and to the end of the term.
Of the term of the person
Term of
that's
the person
stepping
that's
down.
filling. Got it.
Yeah, because if we roll it back, I mean, like
Yeah.
Betty, for example, taking over would have, if this would have been my way, would have filled the
No,
term
no.
of the
She has
seat
to
she
rerun.
had.
She doesn't-
Or like the
she
person had a
doesn't
3-year term. So Betty would come in and fulfill the term rather than just to the election.
Right.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
And then.
Yeah, and I know
And then I had to
that,
run.
that what I've heard from some in Chatham is just a concern.
I don't remember.
How are we going to find somebody who wants to go through a process for 2 months?
Exactly.
So I do think we have our regional agreement subgroup that I believe is getting together next week. So if people have an idea, I can circulate, I've already sort of keyed up the side-by-side on everything that needs to get updated, but if people have a friendly suggestion on what the wording might be, we need to sort of quickly come to consensus on that wording, because within the next, I think our first budget presentation, at least that's firm on the calendar, is Valentine's Day, February 14th. Michael and I are going to Chatham to present the FY24 budget, and my plan was to also be on the agenda to talk about the proposed regional agreement at that selectmen's meeting, which at the moment has pretty light stuff. I mean, it's just, it's replacing regional school district committee with Monomoy Regional School Committee, so it's pretty minor, just updating changes. But if it's going to be something that has, that's going to make people think about, we need to kind of accelerate this way, and then I just need to make sure that Mark Terry, who is I've already launched him to start vetting with DESI. I'm sure that there's nothing that we're trying to do that DESI's going to, mind, but they're vetting whatever that change is.
Yeah, and thank you for that, because I'm just thinking of the select board.
Right, but Tina, let me just
Yeah.
clarify.
Okay.
So in Betty's case, she came on mid-year at the end of Nancy's last year in her term.
Okay, yeah.
That's why Betty has to run again. The person who we conceivably interview for the spot for Danielle will run for her term. So even though this year is ending, they will be voted in, and they will be on till 2024. They will not need to rerun again. Because Danielle would have had to rerun again in 2024. She would have had to pull papers. So they would serve the remainder of this year, this school year, and then they would go all the way around again to May of 2024, and hopefully somewhere in there in March or April, they would pull their papers to run for the 25, 26, 27, the next 3-year term.
All right, so let me just back up. So what you're saying, so Danielle's term ends June, whatever it is, 2024. So whoever Chatham picks will run it through, so they're a year and 2 months? I don't think that's right.
I'm sorry,
You know what, let's talk about this at, just It's at the regional.
I have it pulled
Yeah,
up.
the
I
regional
can-
Yeah.
agreement meeting at this point.
Yeah, I think it's just a completion of,
Yeah.
up until an election
We
is my
just- yeah.
concern.
That's what it
Yes.
says.
Yeah, so we'll just carry this conversation over to the regional agreement and we'll come up with verbiage
Yeah,
in the essence of what you're saying,
yes,
and then we'll bring it back to the board.
okay,
Sound good?
yep.
Okay. Woo, round and round. All right, next item on the agenda is the subcommittee representative liaison report, legislative breakfast.
I think that's Jessica.
It's gonna be Jessica or Tina.
Okay, we're team dealing, because on one side, it's Cape Cod Collaborative, which Jessica is the liaison. On the other side, it's MASC. So this is the annual legislative breakfast that is co-sponsored by MASC, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, for our listening audience, and then Cape Cod Collaborative. So it's an annual event. It is going to be virtual, and you can sign up. I will definitely be going. Jessica, are you going?
I'm going to go for part of it.
Okay.
Yes.
I will definitely be going, so I certainly will attend and report back, but I would certainly invite anyone that's available on Friday morning, which is next Friday, February 3rd. But it's a great networking and talking to our legislators, like, so they can hear from us directly. Like, we'll bring up housing at this conversation. That will be, I expect that'll be part of this conversation. So I just want to alert everyone that that's going on next Friday.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity to have some one-on-one time with the legislatures as
Yep.
well. We have some breakout sessions, and if you want to look, between 9 and 10 is when all the legislators are presenting and speaking, so even if you can come for a short period of time, that would be the best time to go.
Yep.
Thank you, Jessica, very much. Superintendent's report.
I really gave my one recognition already about Erin, and I just want to sort of emphasize the school committee. Poor Rachel Barnes didn't know when she emailed me that, that the admin team was in conversations about how to handle the house manager. She was just validating that, hey, here's this new guy, and he's been great. So it was, she didn't write it to advocate for Erin's position. She just wrote it talking, just from the heart, talking about somebody who came in and has been doing a great job. And, so I really appreciate it. It was just a completely unsolicited email that came my way that I thought, I had emailed her back after she sent it. I said, thank you. It's very timely because, we were about to go and give a budget presentation.
Great. All right.
Comment?
Yes.
Since you brought the theater, I knew we couldn't make it in public comment, but since you brought it up here in this, I just want to comment that I heard from two community members about the holiday concert. I think one of them we all heard from, and then I heard from somebody else that said, and it does relate back to this tech person, that it by far, it was like such a professional production this year with the lights and all these things going that we've never had before. So I just wanted to say that I actually heard from two community members that were blown away and thought they could have been in Boston, watching a holiday concert. It was just really good.
Thank you very much. Action items, we have the second reading of policy file DFA, the investment policy. I'm just looking for a motion. Ms. Henderson?
I would like to move to approve the policy file DFA.
Sharon, can you mute your TV?
Second.
No. Sharon, can you mute your TV?
Investment policy.
Thank you. And is there a second?
I would second this.
Questions? All right, seeing none. Roll call, Sharon? Sharon, roll call?
Aye.
Ms. Games?
Aye.
Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye. Item number 4, second reading of the policy file JICK, JIC, harassment of students. Do I have a motion? Ms. Henderson?
I would like to move to approve policy file JICK, harassment of students.
And a second?
Second?
And any questions, discussion? And roll call, Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
And Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
Chair is an aye. And then we have the declaration of surplus. Ms. Henderson?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the items for surplus listed in our packet this evening.
And a second?
Second?
Questions? And roll call, Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Henderson?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye. We have had the presentation of the warrants, and I welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second that.
And we'll roll call out. Sharon?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
Betty?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
Sorry, I did first names this time. And the chair is an aye, adjourning at 8:26. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.